the Supreme Court, which has adjourned the hearing in the suit filed by IPOB for the release of Nnamdi Kanu to September the 14th. However, Kanu's senior counsel, Michael Zekome, expressed worries that his client might die in the DSS custody due to his deteriorating health, which requires surgical operations. What are the issues for you here, BKO?
Yeah, the September 14 is a bit far, but as Mike Ozekume admitted, it is not the fault of the Supreme Court. It has to do with the busy schedule of the apex court of our country. All kinds of matters get right up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is the final court in the land and is still the most trusted court in the land. Because people believe that once the Supreme Court decides on the matter, then so be it. It is not every judgment of the Supreme Court that people agree with, but the Supreme Court, by the law of averages, has most of the time stood by the Nigerian people. It's played its role as the voice of the powerless, as the court that gives power to the powerless in our land. Ozekume wants Nnamdi Kanu to be transferred to Kuje prison. Remember, they've been asking for this transfer to Kuje prison for a long time. But every time they ask for this transfer to Kuje prison, the judge that was handling this matter, the original matter, Justice trying to remember, the wife of the former governor of Adamawa State, Justice Binta Murtala Nyako, refused to agree to transfer him to Kuje prisons, and they prefer to keep him with the DSS. But Ozekume is saying that his health has deteriorated and that if he remains in the custody of the DSS, he could end up dying in the custody of the DSS. As far as he's concerned, he needs to be released and transferred to Kuje prisons so that he can release treatment like other prisoners, other detainees. So this is the situation. Remember that the IPOB filed a suit on November 3, 2022 against the decision of the appeal court to grant the federal government a stay of execution in respect of the judgment of the appeal court, which ordered the release of Nnamdi Kanu on terrorism charges, and also granted an order that he should be compensated for the manner in which he was brought into Nigeria from Kenya for trial, which breached international legal code. It breached international convention. Before people can be brought into our country, for example, from another country, there has to be an extradition trial. Kanu did not go through an extradition trial. It was forcefully brought into our country, which is not the correct way to bring people from another country to stand trial in your country. It is not the way permitted by international law. But when this happened and the judgment favored Nnamdi Kanu, some of us thought, oh, this is an opportunity to put an end to this matter. But the Attorney General approached the appeal court, and the appeal court granted a stay of execution, which enabled the government to keep Nnamdi Kanu in detention, keep him legally in detention, because the appeal court granted that order to stay the execution of that judgment until the Supreme Court rules otherwise. So, in response to that, Kanu's lawyers filed their own suit before the Supreme Court on the 3rd of November, asking it to set aside the order of the appeal court granted by a 3-man panel on October 28, 2022, enabling the government to keep Nnamdi Kanu in detention rather than releasing as ordered by the appeal court. So this is where we are. The IPOB lawyers have to prove that government was right. I mean, government was wrong in treating Nnamdi Kanu the way they treated him. They have to also convince the apex court that the decision of the appeal court, which released him, the first instance, was right, was in accordance with the law, and so the decision should stand. If the apex court rules that that decision of the appeal court should stand based on the argument advanced by Kanu's lawyers, then Kanu would walk into freedom. But I know that the Attorney General has filed several grounds, challenging the decision of the appeal court, and insisting that it did not breach any law in the manner in which Kanu was brought into our country. Again, that is for the court to prove that you can actually go to another country and forcefully bring someone to your country for trial. They have to be able to explain that indeed that did not contravene the law, that you can actually bypass the extradition trial and forcefully bring a person to court. So it's interesting, and I know that the world is watching.
Absolutely.
They want to see how Kanu's matter is resolved, whether it will be resolved in a manner that is antithetical to the law, or resolved in a manner that is perfectly in line with the law. So we are watching. I sympathize with him that he has had to go live with this long adjournment, because September such a long time. But as Kanu's lawyer too admitted, the Supreme Court is very busy, and that was the best that they could come up with. That was the best adjourned date that they could come up with. But as I've always said, in my view, it is possible to resolve this issue through dialogue. It is possible to resolve this issue through extra-legal means, which means that the two parties can come together and say, look, we want to settle this matter out of court based on certain conditions that have to be met by the two parties. It is not impossible. I've seen it happen in other countries. Even in our country, I've seen nolle prosequi executed. I've seen it happen. And I also believe that it is possible to do that in our country, especially with Kanu having won his case against the Nigerian government. So we have to pursue other means of putting an end to this kind of trial that is just contributing to the eating up of equality and even contributing to worsening security in our country.